What are the basic issues in art education today? I believe they are intimately bound up with our whole educational system and the issues of this country and the world. In our educational system, everything points toward learning, which in most instances means acquiring knowledge. Yet we know too well that knowledge, if it cannot be used by a free mind, will neither be of benefit nor will it make people happy. A somewhat one-sided education with the emphasis on knowledge has neglected those attributes of growth which are responsible for a well-balanced human being who lives cooperatively in his society. The growing number of emotional and mental illnesses in this nation, as well as our inability to live together peacefully, is a frightening sign and vividly points out that education has failed in its most significant aims. While our higher achievements in specialized fields, particularly in the sciences, have improved our material standards of living, they have also diverted us from those values which are responsible for our emotional and spiritual needs. They have introduced a false set of values which neglect the most inner needs of an individual. In a well-balanced educational system in which the development of the whole individual is stressed, his thinking, feeling, and perceiving must be equally developed in order that the potential creative abilities of each individual can unfold. Art education, introduced in the early years of childhood, may well mean the difference between an adjusted, happy human being and one who, in spite of all learning, will remain an unbalanced individual who has difficulty in his relationship to his environment, as statistics of our present population have shown. Because perceiving, thinking, and feeling is equally stressed in any creative process, art may well be the necessary balance for the child's intellect and his emotions. In order to understand the effect of the creative process on the child and how the various components of growth are part and parcel of it, let us try to actually find out what goes on in Johnny's mind while he's busy with his painting. First of all, when he begins, he must think of something. Often, this something seems to us insignificant. For the child, however, it always means a confrontation with his own self, with his own experience. As he thinks of it, his thoughts concentrate on the experience to be painted. His thought process, his ability to think and concentrate on something becomes stimulated. This initial intellectual process is an important part in creative activities. It is self-evident that he will include only those things which he knows and which are important to him. Important to him, however, are only those things to which he has established some more or less sensitive relationships. It is this sensitivity of which I would like to speak a little bit later, which appears to me so tremendously important in this world in which material relationships are stressed more than anything else. So, as his sensitive relationships are established, his emotional relationships will be an important part in his creative process. Let us say that Johnny wants to paint how he plays with other children in the yard. For Johnny, the apple tree in the yard may have big buds because he was watching them to grow. He includes the buds in his paintings because they are important to him. He has established some sensitive relationship to them. They are part of his knowledge, his observation, and his experience. Bob was using the tree only for climbing. Buds had no meaning and were therefore not included in his painting. Johnny was interested in Mary's dress. He likes Mary. His painting indicates more details on Mary than elsewhere. He paints Mary much larger than anything else because she is important to him. His painting, like that of all children, is not an objective representation. On the contrary, it expresses his likes and dislikes, his emotional relationships to his world and the world which surrounds him, all his sensitivities of perceiving, thinking, and feeling. It also expresses not only what he knows, but what he feels, sees, and touches, if he has become sensitively aware of it. In order to understand this fully, let us go back to our own experiences. We too can only recall things to the extent to which either our knowledge or our individual relationships permit us. Let us think, for instance, of a traffic light. Well, we all know that it consists of 3 different colored lights. Our knowledge has registered that. We will, however, not be so sure with regard to the location of the colors. Is the green light on top, or is the red? Only our ability to observe it will be responsible for recalling it. Once we have become sensitized towards this particular location by conscious observation, we shall incorporate this newly gained relationship into our permanent understanding. Such more sensitive relationships can, however, be fostered by experience, which we have with things. We, for instance, were colorblind. We would have to depend on the location of the lights and would very soon have to become aware of the red light on the top. Needless to say, the more sensitive relationship that Johnny does and to which he is exposed has some influence upon him. If he in his creative work continuously attempts Dad fixes the fence. Johnny couldn't draw Dad without putting himself into his place while fixing the fence. This makes him better understand Dad. He even thinks how Dad lifts the heavy hammer to drive the post into the ground. Dad must be strong. It is one of the important attributes of any creative process that we become more sensitive to things with which we are dealing. If Johnny thinks of his environment more sensitively, he has been taught to do one of the most important things that we need in the world of today, to become more sensitive to the needs of others. This is one of the most vital prerequisites for a cooperative attitude. In putting himself into the place of Dad in his picture, Johnny has just experienced this vital need. Johnny not only becomes more sensitive to the things he paints, he also develops a great sensitivity to the materials he uses. He learns by experience that the lines of a crayon are different if he puts different pressure on it, that he can use the broad side of the crayon, that watercolor merges easily and produces beautiful mixtures. All this he learns by trial and error, and soon incorporates it into his painting. To discover and explore what different art materials can do to learn their behavior is also one of the important trends which the child develops through creative activities. Johnny even learns to predict their behavior. He knows exactly how much he can bend wood, what he can do with wire, what colors to mix in order to get the one he wants. He has become so sensitive to the reaction of paint that he uses great skills in handling them. This skill, which is only a result of the urge for expression, is a vital part of the creative process. When Johnny began to paint his backyard picture, he had to decide where to put the tree, the swings, the fence, Mary, Dad, Rowdy, and Bob. He had to organize all these things meaningfully. What he knew of the tree, the swing, Mary, the fence, and Dad and Bob had to be related to how he felt about these things, and this had to be related to the location of the things on the paper. He also gave some definite color to the objects which he painted. Thus, another relationship was established. All this organization takes place in the child subconsciously, but it is all part of Johnny's personality. Virginia, for instance, she cannot express herself as flexibly as Johnny. She's tense and has developed a certain emotional inflexibility. She cannot meet new situations as Johnny does. Her mind does not adjust as easily to her environment, and therefore she has established a certain sameness of reactions. She always draws the same kind of pattern. as she reacts in the same kind of patterns. Her mind is fixed on one thing, and this she keeps repeating. This repetition gives her a certain security. She knows that she can repeat things again and again. She also knows that she does not need to meet new situations when she repeats things. But this is a false security into which she is escaping whenever she cannot do justice to a new situation. It is the same reaction that we find in children who cannot follow an order, that is, adjust to a given situation, escape into a tantrum if they have to go to sleep or if they have to stop with their play. A tantrum is also an emotional pattern, a repeated reaction which is used whenever the child cannot adjust to a given situation. But we can help the child by gradually conditioning him to the new situation. In art education, we call conditioning an art motivation. That is, we prepare him gradually to what he will expect in terms of changes. If he has to go to bed, we may, a quarter of an hour before he goes to bed, try to motivate him that soon he will have to stop with his play. By such gradual shift from one activity to another activity, we may accomplish his adjustment. Johnny, through his continued art motivations, could adjust flexibly to any situations which he was facing. During the creative process, he not only used his intellect in finding out about the tree, the swing, the fence, Rowdy, Dad, and the other things, but he gave expression to his emotional relationships to Mary, his dog, and even the tree, because he loved to climb it. He observed the buds, Mary's dress, and became more sensitive to his environment. He independently created his own forms and concepts. By putting himself into the place of others, he learned the needs of others, one of the important parts of social growth. By organizing all his experiences into a creative product, he integrated all these experiences into a total, inseparable whole, the aesthetic product. Instead of promoting art education as a means to fully develop the child's personality for a better and more adjusted life, we often unconsciously thwart the individual by confronting him with education. Disregard of the individual child, but clearly counteract any democratic principles by denying the individual the right for his own expression. In times like these, in which individual freedom is endangered by political forces, education has to be especially sensitive in applying its methods. In order to understand the effect of coloring in workbooks which contain such repetitive stereotype forms on children, let us go through the process a child goes through while using them, and let us also find out the after effect this process may have on our children. Let us assume that the first picture the child has to fill in is that of a dog. As soon as the child is confronted with the task of following a predetermined outline, we have prevented him from solving his own relationships creatively. His relationship to a dog may be one of love, friendship, dislike, or fear. There is no opportunity for him to express his relationship and thus relieve himself of tensions of joy, hatred, or fear. There is no place in coloring books to express anxiety. With their activity. After all, they have colored the dog. Next time at school or elsewhere, when one of these children is asked to draw something, he remembers the dog in the coloring book. Realizing that he could not compete, he says, quite logically, "I can't draw." I've heard many teachers or parents say, "But my children love coloring books." This is quite true. Children in general, however, do not discriminate between things good for them or things detrimental. That they love things is not always an indication that those things are good for them. Most children prefer sweets to vegetables, and without doubt would always prefer them. This, however, does not mean that we should adjust their diet to sweets. Children, once conditioned to overprotection, they love it too. In fact, they become so dependent on it that they can no longer enjoy their freedom. In countless cases, I've seen parents doing everything for their children. Children who simply stretch out their leg and their shoe is laced, then turn around and their hair is combed almost automatically like on the assembly line. These are the children who sit in the midst of their toys and don't know what to do with them, or go to camp and sit lonely in a corner while others enjoy their freedom and play. A child, once conditioned to coloring books, will have difficulties in enjoying the freedom of creating. The dependency which such methods create is devastating. It has been revealed by experimentation and research that more than half of all children, once exposed to coloring books, lose their creativeness and their independence of expression and become rigid and dependent. Some teachers may still tell you that with the coloring book the child learns the discipline of staying within the line of a given picture area. It has also been proved by experiment that this is not true at all. More children color beyond the given boundaries in coloring books than in objects they draw themselves. If Johnny draws his dog, he has much more incentive to remain within his boundaries than if he colors a dog in a coloring book to which he has no relationship whatsoever. Thus, it has been proved beyond any doubt that such imitative procedures as found in coloring and workbooks make the child dependent in his thinking. They do not give him the freedom to create what he wants. They make the child inflexible because he has to follow what he has been given. They do not provide emotional relief because they give the child no opportunity to express his own experience and thus acquire a release for his emotions. They do not even promote skill and discipline because the great contribution of art education to our educational system and to our society, however, is the emphasis components of growth which are responsible for a well-balanced human being. This, my friends, is especially important at a time where the individual and his freedom is endangered both by the forces of modern industrialization as well as by the forces of totalitarian thinking. For our children, however, art should become the friend to whom they naturally turn with their joys and sorrows, even unconsciously, a friend to whom they turn whenever words become inadequate. Thank you. Now, I wished I could be with you and engage in a good discussion about all the questions you may have on your mind. But I cannot think of anyone better to substitute for me than of Alkisselbach. I know he will be glad to answer all your questions, and I do hope that there are many. I was very glad to have been with you, at least in spirit. Again, thank you.